Grant. I'm Dave, executive producer of 8 and 5, the web series, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Welcome to the first installment of GenreTainment, and we are your hosts, Marks
and Julie, and we are here to give you news on our favorite TV shows, movies, web series, and everything in between.
We also have interviews, like today's interview with Victor Brooke Miller, who's most famous for being the writer of the first Friday the 13th.
But he has written way more than that, including some of my favorite soap operas. Yes, I'm admitting to actually watching some soap operas today.
He also gives writing workshops, so you can rest assured that we're going to be asking him to give us some tips on screenwriting.
And don't forget about Cabin in the Woods.
Yes. We also find out what Victor really thinks about that horror film.
No!
With it being the first episode, and that's really enjoying Victor's interview so much, we made this episode a little longer than the usual hour.
We don't have an official theme song yet, so what you just heard was a snippet from the theme song used for our web series, Reality on Demand. It's a song composed and performed by our friend T. Sean Hardy. Before the interview, we have some news that are hot off of the virtual presses. First up,
where in the force is that live-action Star Wars series we keep hearing about? We heard not long ago that budget constraints would be causing a long delay of the premiere for this new series, but Lucasfilm's producer Rick McCallum told the website Den of Geeks there's an even bigger obstacle. It isn't very family-friendly TV.
So?
Now, I doubt we're talking about Game of Thrones gore or True Blood-style orgies, although that would be a bizarre turn in the franchise, but rather a grittier and darker tone. After all, it's about characters who are criminals and gangsters and takes place between episode 3 and 4 when, the whole empire is trying to take over the galaxy. Not exactly the brightest times in the Star Wars universe, And the proposed series, with the working title Star Wars Underworld, actually has 50 hours of scripts of what McCallum says are second draft scripts, and would probably take about a year of prep before shooting would start. But considering they estimate a budget of $5 to $6 million per episode, plus the riskier, darker tone, which McCallum likens to Deadwood in space, which is interesting. It may be a very, very long time, or actually a very long, long time in a galaxy far, far away before we see this series on TV.
And MTV is getting ratings worth howling over in joy for their new series, Teen Wolf. Now MTV wants to repeat the formula by bringing another film to the small screen. This time, it's Wes Craven's slasher series, Scream. Ugh. This is all pretty new news, so details are slim. But TV Line reports that MTV is looking for a writer for the pilot, and no word yet if Craven or if any of the other creators of the films will be involved. So what do you think? Brilliant idea, or is MTV getting carried away? Just please, please don't adapt any more board games to TV, okay? The movie Battleship sunk enough for a lifetime. We here are big fans of Starz Gladiator series Spartacus, so it comes to no surprise that we are disappointed and disheartened to hear that Starz is ending the series with the upcoming 10-episode third season called War of the Damned. No, this is a theme for me for today. Showrunner Stephen S.D. Knight told The Hollywood Reporter that the reasoning behind the decision, one thing he made clear that it was not due to ratings because the show was pulling in 6 million viewers a week. And he says, my original thought was that this show could go 5 to 7 seasons, but we realized the actual history is very scattershot. We thought instead of repeating ourselves with one wave of Roman senators after another going after Spartacus, getting defeated, going after Spartacus, getting defeated, why not really condense the story? It's like The Princess Bride. Cut out all the boring bits and just make the best, most rip-roaringest tale we can wrap up in the series. The series had faced some terrible challenges, which it overcame, including the untimely passing of their lead actor, Andy Whitfield. May he rest in peace. But it looks like the creators decided it was time to end on a high note. It is disappointing for us fans, but at least we will get a solid ending, which starts airing this January.
And the Joss Whedon-directed film The Avengers is now officially the third highest-grossing movie of all time, on both the domestic and worldwide charts. Now that beats the former third-place holder, The Dark Knight, as officially the highest-earning comic book-based movie in history. It should be interesting to see how The Amazing Spider-Man, which comes out on July 3rd, and The Dark Knight Rises, which is out on July 20th, will compare. And speaking of breaking records, according to a blog post by Hulu CEO Jason Kilar, I don't know how to pronounce that, but the online video streaming service recently signed up its 2 millionth subscriber for its subscription service Hulu Plus. Now those high subscription numbers give an estimated 400% increase in monthly profits for the year, and that doesn't include their ad revenue. Now, what's Hulu going to do with all that money? Well, the CEO says he plans to spend over $500 million on original and exclusive programming for the site in 2012. And they're actually premiering a number of original shows this very week, including Kevin Smith's new show, Spoilers, which he calls an anti-movie review show. And about those Hulu numbers, does it mean less people are watching traditional TV? Well, possibly. A new report from Nielsen, the TV audience ratings and measurement folks, show that the number of people who watch TV at least once per month declined from 90% of the population to 83% last year. And elsewhere on the web, while we're on the topic of the web series Red vs. Blue is returning for a 10th season with a special guest, the star of Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood.
And don't forget, folks, True Blood, woohoo, returns with Season 5 starting this Sunday, June 10th. I know we can't wait to see it.
And movie and TV audiences, they love zombies. And Amazon Studios has a zombie project in the works that would either be brilliant or not so
terrible.
Good. Yes. Deadline reports that Clive Barker, the filmmaker that brought us Hellraiser, has signed on to direct and rewrite the script for Zombies vs. Gladiators for Amazon. In case you hadn't heard, the gigantic online retailer is getting into the movie business. Now, this project is one of 16 coming from Amazon Studios, which is using public submissions and feedback to help craft potential films. I know there's been a little buzz with screenwriters kind of worried about rights issues and stuff, but maybe that's something we could talk about in the future. But what's it about? Well, it starts with a shaman who's about to die in the Coliseum who casts a spell that raises history's first wave of zombies, and it's up to a gladiator to stop the spread of the zombie horde and save Rome. So what do you say? Thumb up, or down?
I say they need Animaeus from Spartacus. But speaking of zombies, yes, everybody loves The Walking Dead so much that apparently it is becoming a reality. Well, sort of. Web has been abuzz with cannibal cases, and keywords associated with zombies and bath salts has been topping Google Trends for a week now. It all started last week in Miami when a naked homeless man was shot while eating another man's face. Actually, I think the man that got eaten was the homeless guy. But since then, more cannibal-themed stories have been popping up. Many brand new ones and a few old ones that they've dusted off and are now getting new attention. Recently, there was a man in New Jersey who cut his own stomach open and tried to throw his intestines at the police officers who entered his home. The man in Baltimore who ate the brain and heart of a missing person. The chef in Japan who fed his cooked genitals to the people in his restaurant. I'm glad I'm a vegetarian. The world has gone zombie crazy. The CDC even had to give an official statement that zombies aren't real and we are not in the midst of a zombie apocalypse. In all likelihood due to their media push, just last year, encouraging everyone to prepare for a zombie apocalypse. So, is the media just picking up on some obscure stories to benefit from this trend? Are the mentally ill being motivated to cross the line because of stories that they're seeing and somehow being influenced? Is there some new street drug out there that has a horrible side effect, like bath salts? Or could there be some strange zombie-like virus? I do know that there are illnesses that are referred to as zombie illnesses, also called sleeping sickness. And at one point in the early 1900s, 250,000 people died in one area of Africa due to this. There have been rumors over the years of voodoo medicine inducing zombie-like states in an effort to brainwash people. I don't know about the bath salts thing. I'm getting flashbacks of reefer madness, trying to convince people that bath salts and a plant could possibly make people do these things. So, with these strange cases popping up in the news, the government is denying anything wrong. If this was a movie, I would be worried. I think we all would be. But this isn't a movie, right? Of course, that is what a character in a movie would say. Ah, crap.
Now, without further ado, let's get to our interview with a man that started a horror franchise that spawned, I believe, 12 movies, a television show, novels, comic books, and so much more. And we interviewed Victor Brook-Miller last week and asked him how he dreamed up the first movie and also got his opinions on writing, his work on soap operas, and so much more. So here we go.
You're going to Camp Blood, ain't you? You'll never come back again. It's got a death curse.
Well, let's start off with Friday the 13th. You wrote the first one, and I guess just how did you originally come up with the whole concept?
That is some absolutely magical, surreal moment in my life when basically I was starving. I was trying to sell my blood, and I had a wife and 2 children, still do. Sean Cunningham and I had made 2 family films together earlier, several years earlier, and because all of America said we needed family entertainment and a good G-rated movie, and it was untrue because we made these nice little G-rated movies and they made no money at all. And so Sean called me up one day and said, Halloween is making a lot of money, let's rip it off. And that is the spiritual basis of my career. I claim no angel came down at my bed or devil came to my bed and said, I have the answer for you. It was basically I went to go see Deborah Hill and John Carpenter's masterpiece. I enjoyed it. I am not a horror expert, so I was certainly new to the field other than the fact that I'd seen Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and Dracula and Psycho. But by watching Halloween that one time, I learned a kind of a formula that Hill and Carpenter had come up with, which I think is still workable, provided you give it a haircut, as we say in the business, and make it look different. But I learned everything I learned from Halloween, and I know everybody else wants to think that this was a divinely or a satanic gift that I had, but it was just a piece of craft. Plus, I'd spent that was 1979, and I had been freelancing for 9-10 years, and starving, except for the fact that my wife was a legal secretary and earning money to support us in some way. But I'd picked up some pieces of craft, and the other thing is that I was fortunate enough to be given a very strange family of origin, which allowed me to invent Mrs. Voorhees and her son Jason, and that's kind of how it all happened.
Do you remember the moment where you said, "Aha, this is going to be the killer"? She's going to be the villain in this. I mean, that you came up with that. Did it just pop in your head? Were you making a list and trying to decide who would be the best, antagonist in this?
Well, again, going with the format that Halloween used, they had, if you're going to do a low-budget picture, you still need a name player. And I cannot remember the name of the actor who was the big-name actor in Halloween, who played the psychiatrist. But anyway, he was the money player, and so I was using that same thing. And I said, well, I can't just go with a guy, so I'll go with a woman. And who better, And the other point that I learned from Halloween is that the killing has to be justified by some prior evil that happens way back when, because otherwise you just have a mindless serial killer who, for no good reason, goes around killing little campers. And it shouldn't be just sort of a moral rearmament person saying if you're going to commit adultery, then you have to die. So I really liked, and this is the part that I didn't understand consciously. It came to me subconsciously, according to one of my psychologists. And she said, I can't believe you don't know why you created Mrs. Voorhees the way you did. And this was after hearing me whine for years about my mother. But it turns out that Mrs. Voorhees was kind of the magical version of my actual mother, because one of my complaints about my mother was that she usually sided with people against me. And what I liked about Mrs. Voorhees was that, because these crazy camp counselors had not been paying attention to her kid, she would go out and kill every camp counselor she could get her hands on. And I thought, boy, that's a neat mom. I wish I'd had that mom. And so I created her, but it was not conscious at all. It just sort of, it all seemed to flow out. And it obviously, I know that this will make a lot of English teachers wince, but horror films are still an art form of some sort, and it still comes from the same place that Melville and Hemingway wrote from, though for slightly different reasons, perhaps. But you can't help but put pieces of your own life and your own psyche in it. So my hero really is Mrs. Voorhees, and that's why I've had relatively no interest or none in the sequels, because they just sort of brought Jason back to life, which kind of was weird, and have him as the killer. And I'm not. They sort of said, well, okay, the reason he kills people is that his mother was killed. Well, she killed people because he was killed. I mean, this is at least circular logic, and troubles me greatly, but it doesn't trouble me when they pay me.
Now, did you find that completing the script or seeing the film made was, since it was such a personal story for you on some level, did you find that to be a very cathartic experience? Did it help you in any way, or?
I think it did, but in ways that I'm not totally aware of. I just know that both Harry Manfredini, the guy who wrote the music for Friday the 13th and for many of the sequels, we've had a number of talks, and I've heard him talk in public on the thing, and he said that that piece of music that he wrote for Friday the 13th that goes, killer mom, or kick,
yeah.
Well, he said that came from reading the screenplay, and he said there was those sequences that I wrote where Mrs. Voorhees vocalizes for her dead child, "Kill her, mommy, kill her," and in that moment where he said he really that was kind of that seminal moment for him. So he did the kick, kill, and he put it in the triplexer or whatever it was. And then Betsy Palmer, when she talked about sort of finding her place inside the role of Mrs. Voorhees, she said she found it in the line that goes in that same sequence, he wasn't a very good swimmer, and she just said that crystallized everything for me. And those, where the mother actually vocalizes for her dead child, and where the mother says, he wasn't a very good swimmer, and there's so much. I know it's twisted and it's demonic, but there's so much love in those little moments, even though they're inside out and backwards. But then that's the story of my upbringing, which was inside out and backwards. So it all made sense and was great fun. And the other parts were all of the particular ways of killing people. Those all came from fears I had as a child, from ages 4 through 12 inclusive.
Where did the title Friday the 13th come from?
Yeah.
That came from Sean. I am willing to state unequivocally that if I ever give you a title for something that you've written, don't use it, because I'm terrible at titling things. I will go to my grave being embarrassed for the working title that I came up with when I was doing the first draft of the screenplay was Long Night at Camp Blood, because I was totally convinced that this was just going to be a potboiler like the other stuff we'd done, which was going to go to drive-in movies and then die very quickly. So I just made a title that sounded like a horror movie. And
I think it's got a catchy.
Well, then Sean, I mean, if I were doing a DVD movie today, I could probably do something called Long Night at Camp Blood and sell 120 copies. But that's not quite the same thing as 35 years later. But Sean called up. I guess I was halfway through the second draft, and he said, "We're going to call it Friday the 13th." And I said, "Well, it's a wonderful idea. I love the title, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the screenplay I've written. But I can certainly put something in there." And he said, "Go right ahead." So I put in some references to Friday the 13th. The policeman says, "Boy, full moon, and it's Friday the 13th, too. Boy, rough night." And that was kind of it. And, of course, it's it's made its own mythology now. I mean, I know it's a lack of hubris on my part, but I have the feeling that I now know what it feels like to be an author whose work gets rethought and reimagined in the sense of he must have been thinking about this or he must have been thinking about that, when in fact I was just trying to feed my family.
Now, do you think that they would have, what do you think they would have done with the sequels? Would they have kept that name if you'd called it Long Night at Camp Blood? Do you?
Oh, I can't. Well, I don't think anybody would have wanted a sequel.
Just from the title?
Longer Night.
I just thought it was genius. I had not in any way. Look, I was so pessimistic about this whole thing. I mean, look, I'd done 2 films with Sean, one about a little baseball team, one about a little soccer team. These are kids' movies, and they made absolutely $0, or they barely covered their costs. And then we got into the horror genre. I mean, over the years with Sean, I'd come up with all kinds of ideas, and we were going to make all kinds of movies. And so there are 3 or 4 screenplays somewhere along the line there that I wrote that we never sold. And then so I had no faith in that this was going to go anywhere. So. And I had no idea that it was going to become a sequel, and I thought it was awfully fortuitous that in that last shot, the lake, there's a sort of a little circle of, I don't know, something falls in the lake, and there's these circles, the rings of water go out. And I said, oh, look, they're going to make a sequel. And I had nothing to do with the sequels because by that time I was too expensive, and so I went on about my job.
Now, you're on record as not really being a fan of the sequels. What did you think of the remake that came out? What was it, a year or 2 ago?
Well,
a couple years or so ago?
I've gone on the record about the remake, which was not a remake. I think it was a...
reimagining or something?
Wasn't even a reimagining.
No, I don't know what it was.
To not to put too fine a point on it, it was a rip-off of the fan base. They kept telling in the publicity that it was a remake, and yet when I came to say, oh, it's a remake, well then I'm contractually, they're contractually obliged to pay me a much larger fee for a remake than for a sequel. So I called my union and I said, what's up with this? And they said, well, we're going to send you a copy of the script and you can read it, and if you feel it's a remake and they're using a number of your original things and your original story, then it's a remake. So I read it and I said, oh my God, this is not a remake. I mean, they use like 22 seconds or 4 minutes or something of my stuff, and then they go blithely on in the future with Jason running around underground in a tunnel. And that's the only screenplay I have ever read of a sequel, and I only read it to see if it was a remake. And I said, well, if they're calling it a remake in public, shouldn't they pay me that way? And they said, no, they can call it. They can call it Afghanistan if they want, but as far as their contract with the Writers Guild, it's a sequel. So they lied to the public, and here they are.
Wow.
So I just, that's taking venality to a new level.
Well, we're on the topic of names and titling names. Where did Jason Voorhees come from? Where did that originate?
God, I love this one.
This will be good.
Well, I went to a boarding school, and there was a young lady with the name Voorhees, so it just came to my mind. I always thought it was a very strange name. It had kind of I don't know, spectral qualities to it. It doesn't sound like Miller Smith or Pyle, for God's sake. But it has a kind of a, I don't know, spectral ghost-like quality. So I thought, hey, that's a great one. And originally it was going to be Joshua, because my son's name is Joshua. But then I thought, not for this particular thing. It's just too grisly. So Jason had always seemed, I forget, there was some bully I knew when I was like 6 years old that was named Jason, and I wanted to pay him back, so I killed him. And And Jason just always seemed to me like, I mean, I know it was Jason in the Golden Fleece or whatever, and the Argonauts or whatever, but it always just seemed like a name of somebody that I wasn't going to trust. So, actually, but I'm sure all the Jasons out there think that they can be trustworthy, but they don't know they can't.
Well, it has a good rhythm to it though, because it's Jason Voorhees, so it's got the S sound cutting through in both the first and last name, which kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit better. And
who could be more kind or gentler than a Pamela?
That's true.
Yeah.
Pamela Voorhees, you'd think, oh goodness, we must have her take care of our children.
Yes, that sounds like a good name for a daycare center, owner or worker.
Right. Yes. And Pammy, come over here. The one thing nobody's ever asked me to do, and I would love to do, would be the prequel to Friday the 13th, because I definitely want to get into the relationship that Pamela had, and obviously it would have to be played by somebody younger than all of us, but the relationship she had with perhaps Peter Brower, the actor who plays the camp director, with his grandfather who started the camp or something like that, and to really get into some fun with that whole deal. But I have no idea what their plans are.
I want to see that.
I do too. I do. We haven't talked in 20 years or more, so such is life in the fast lane.
I don't know if you've done any horror movies since then or not.
Well, I did one immediately afterwards. When I went to Hollywood for my 19 seconds of fame, I was in the office of the head of Columbia Pictures, and he said, "What do you got? What do you got? Any ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to do a horror film in a hospital." And he said, "Get this kid's agent on the phone." And so, I'm surrounded. There were 3 secretaries coming in and asking me what kind of bottled water I wanted, and there was like 4 assistants, and so they were on the phone on one corner of the room talking to my agent. Next thing I knew, I had a check for $150,000 to start a horror film from one phrase.
Wow.
Horror film in a hospital. Wow. And so I went home to my wife, who had not seen more than $10,000 ever from anything I'd ever done. And so she said, "Oh, good." And so I started writing this movie. And a week later, I got a call from this guy, one of the under-producers at Columbia. And he said, Mr. Price has done some research, meaning he's obviously had somebody look in a newspaper somewhere, and said that movies in hospitals don't make money. So, and I went, oh my God! I mean, all I had was one concept: horror film in a hospital. I didn't have anything else. So I said, "Does this mean I have to give the money back?" And he said, "No. Can you change the venue?" And I said, "Sure. What do you want?" And he said, "How about a women's college?" And I said, "Fine." And I have, on more than one occasion, I have said at that moment, that's when I knew I had gone from author to prostitute, which is calling me by a much higher class name than I deserve.
Well, I would say escort. Isn't that like higher on the totem pole of the prostitutes? I mean, it's classier.
Yes, I don't think I was that classy at that moment, though. I was just so scared that I'd have to give up the only money I'd seen in 10 years. So,
I'm sure your wife was as well, yes.
Yeah. I said, no way. And so I completed the screenplay, and then it went into turnaround and never got made. And somewhere in the vaults of Columbia Pictures, there's a copy of this thing. And then I went on and did, I did Strangers Watching for another draft for Sean, who had already started the production of that, the Mary Higgins Clark book, which wasn't really horror, it was more terror with Kate Mulgrew and Rip Torn. And after that I did some stuff, and then there was a recession, much like the one now, only not as bad. And somebody said, "You want to write soap opera?" And I said, "Why not? I've never seen one." So I went and interviewed at ABC and had a wonderful time. With the head of ABC Daytime, Jackie Smith, and she hired me on as a consultant for about 6 months. I was paid $1,500 a week to watch One Life to Live, which I thought was really, I mean, I was in Fat City now, boy. And so I watched One Life to Live for 6 months, and I would go in on Mondays and take part in the discussions about where the story should go and stuff like that. And then I really liked the communal form of the craft. It was kind of fun sitting in a room with people saying, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? Well, what if they do this? Because my training had been in improvisational theater. And so it was like being in an improv group with a typewriter. So it was great fun, and so I continued on, worked up to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage, and every time the ratings would go down or sideways or something, they would fire the writers. So I went from One Life to Live to All My Children to Guiding Light to Another World, back to All My Children. Oh Lord, somewhere else, and then I did General Hospital for a while, and then, pardon me, and then I ended up at All My Children again for the last in 2005, and then I retired. And so 3 Emmys and 4 Writers Guild Awards later, I'm retired on a very nice Writers Guild pension.
Wow. Now, who was it, and how did they make the leap from, here's the guy who came up with Friday the 13th, let's get him on a soap?
Oh, well, a very fine idea, question. It was actually Sean's lawyers. One of them represented the head writer of One Life to Live, and who was looking for another assistant to help out. And he said, "Hey, maybe Victor can, he can write anything." So he sent me in for the interview.
Oh wow!
And so that was, it really is who you know. But of course, if who you know, if it's who you know, as long as you can deliver some kind of product.
Yeah.
So I did that for 25 years, and had great fun doing it, and horrible times, but it allowed me to put 2 sons through various colleges and stuff, and we had a good time.
Oh, great.
Which one was your favorite of the soaps?
Of the soaps? Oh, All My Children, without a doubt. But back in the time when they had Phoebe Wallingford and Langley,
yes,
the craziest people in the universe, and it was the most fun. And then, unfortunately, we entered into a period of heavy network assistance. We called it intervention. They called it help. And so, and they lost. I think they lost their nerve. Because at its height, All My Children was great because it went where the buses don't run, and I think one of the reasons that soap opera has collapsed is that as the networks and the sponsors got more conservative, the audience's interest dropped. I mean, because it became more soapy and less interesting. It was. At one point, it was actually cool to watch All My Children and General Hospital when they had Snow Princess or whatever, Ice Princess. And I remember when I was at All My Children, we were the top soap opera at the Harvard Law School's cafeteria, or wherever they hung out. And so, that's pretty good for, actually having people with brains watching soaps. And I don't blame them. It was great fun, and blowing up Jenny's jet ski was great fun.
Yeah, All My Children was always my mother's favorite, and that was when I didn't really watch soaps except when I was a young girl during summer break. My mom could always come. She had worked very close to home, so she'd come home at lunch, and we would watch All My Children. And we would watch that together, and sometimes I would catch the other ABC soaps and during those breaks, and those were the only ones I watched. But my mother was pretty well devastated when they went off the air this last year.
and rightly so. I mean, those were some of the greatest relationships. I've heard so many stories like that, and it doesn't matter whether it was Guiding Light or Another World or As the World Turns. There are grandmothers and daughters and mothers and daughters and grandmothers and sons who, otherwise the kids would have been latchkey kids, and they would come home and they would sit on the couch and have snacks with Granny or Mom or whoever it was, and talk about these crazy situations and say, well, what would you do and what would you do? I mean, there was I don't mean to glorify soaps as a moral center, but it at least offered the opportunity to say, well, is Tad a moral person or is he amoral? And you could enter into discussion instead of saying, instead of pontificating to the child, you could say, well, what do you think about what Jenny just did? Or Mrs. Nelson when she wouldn't let Greg hang out with Jenny. What would you do? And Agnes Nixon, God bless her, was responsible for a lot of storylines that otherwise, she did the first abortion one in a returning Viet vet. She also, we did, while I was there, the first AIDS story. Of course, the network and the sponsors chickened out, and so we had to give the AIDS to a poor woman who was married to an IV drug user rather than a gay male, because they were afraid of losing audience share. But that's only to be expected with the nature of the business. Then came O.J. Simpson, and that was the beginning of the end of soap opera, because half our audience went to go watch O.J., and then after the trial, half of the audience did not half didn't return.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's if you want to see where the seminal moment of reality TV really burrowed in beneath the skin, that's where it happened, because everybody said, certainly the TV broadcasters saw the O.J. trial didn't cost a thing relative to Susan Lucci's salary, and you didn't have to pay Judge Ito. You just had to pay those talking heads out in front of the street saying, well, I don't know whether the jury's going to come on, right? I don't know. And they were just making this stuff up.
Do you think that also solidified sort of the transition from the news network going from journalism to basically focusing on entertainment? Yeah.
I mean, we now have soap opera 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing happened at nighttime. We now have episodic nighttime. It used to be it wasn't serial before. I mean, it is this. Tina and I my wife and I love The Good Wife, and you have to have watched every episode to really get into it. Same thing with a lot of the best cable shows. Justified, it always has a cliffhanger, just like we did. Mm-hmm. And the good stuff just keeps on going. In the old days, you had one complete episode, beginning, middle, and an end, and you could shuffle them any way you wanted to. And like from Miami Vice, rarely had a cliffhanger, except at the commercial break in the middle.
So, as far as shows that you do watch now, you watch Justified, The Good Wife.
We have many guilty pleasures in the house of Victor and Tina. One of the things I notice about a lot of these shows now is that, especially the cable ones, is that there's nobody to root for. Everybody is thoroughly despicable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this I find, Agnes Nixon taught me a great deal when I was new to soap opera, and she said, "Victor, who am I rooting for?" And I never forgot that. I mean, it's what I always look for in movies. I mean, my mother dropped me off at the movie theater when I was like 6 years old and just left me there. And I guess she went off to get a wave and a set, as they used to say in the days. And I just, there was always a hero, and you always rooted for that person, and he would get or she would get in desperate straits, and at the end it would be okay. And now I find everybody's repulsive. Like, I don't know who to root for in Game of Thrones. I rooted for Sean Bean, and they killed him.
Yeah, we're divided on that. He watches it, and I don't. So
I want the woman with the dragons to come back. She was kind of fun.
As far as getting back to all the soap operas, I mean, you certainly made the rounds for a lot of years. Was there one that stands out as more satisfying to write, or more fun, or that you just enjoyed writing for more so than the others, or they pretty much?
Well, anytime, yes. There was one storyline. Megan McTavish was my favorite pal in soap opera writing. She was a very gifted head writer, still is, but right now she's just raising Bernese Mountain Dogs in Connecticut. She and I were just pals for years, and we were at Guiding Light, and I came up with this storyline idea, and she was nifty. If she thought that an idea somebody else had, she would fight for it incredibly, and had no worries about authorship and all that kind of stuff. And so I my wife had told me about this story that she'd read in the New York Times, where a prostitute in Berlin had twins, clearly not identical because one was black and one was white, and so they were fraternal. Mm-hmm. And she had unprotected sex, obviously, with one black person and one white person in the same hour or two. And so I learned it was possible. Well, I said to Megan, for 20 years or so, I have been writing these horrible scenes where everybody, somebody's pregnant, everybody goes to the hospital, and we play this scene on Friday with a cliffhanger. The technician comes out of the lab and says, "Okay, Bob, it's yours." Or he says, "Oh, I have the results." And then on Monday, in the pickup, he says, "It's yours," to Bob. And I said, I've written too many of those. I want to have one where the guy comes out on Friday and says, "I have the results." And on Monday, he says, "It's Bob's and Tom's." and Megan said, "That's dynamite. Let's do it." So we argued and got Procter & Gamble and I guess it was CBS, I forgot who it was, to agree to go with it. And because what I thought would be great is if both fathers said, "Well, I don't want to be left out," and so we had kind of a Three's Company deal where both fathers would live with the mother, obviously not cohabiting in the sense of three in a bed, but they would all be living, and they're trying to group raise these kids, and that would just generate so many warm, rich, and ridiculous, and fun, and loving storylines. It would show at least two guys who really wanted to be with their sons and not just take off, and all kinds of, who gets to use the kitchen? Do you have two kitchens? And I don't want to have one of your omelets again. You cook like shit, or whatever. And so anyway, we did that, and about 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later, we were fired.
Oh no!
Oh yeah, and then no sooner had we been canned, and we're on to some other show. I think we were at One Life to Live, or All My Children by that time. They wrote backwards. They wrote a storyline that said that the DNA technician had been co-opted by some malevolent spirit on the show to do that stupid thing, and so it really was Bob's, not Bob's and Tom's, and so.
Oh no, I loved your idea.
Oh, I know, but I think that sense is what happened to daytime drama, that they lost any of the fun and punchy, and you've got to stay ahead of the curve. You better get their attention, and you can't get it by saying by having Tad's mother take you aside for a 15-minute scene about being loyal to your girlfriend. Whether you're writing a screenplay or a novel or a soap opera, the only question, and I did this in a workshop I did in Evansville, I said, you just keep asking and answering the same question over and over again. What happens next? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And that's what writing is. You can make it. There are all kinds of more sophisticated parts to it, but it really boils down to, and then what happens? And then what happens?
So, for people who might be listening who are writers or want to become writers, what would you suggest on someone trying to break in this industry? How could they possibly break in?
I have two answers to that. The first one is, I'll tell you the personal experience. I wrote a horror movie this fall and winter with two guys via Skype, and it's really a good horror movie, and we can't find a buyer at this point. And you'd think somebody who wrote Friday the 13th would be able to walk in and sell it. It's a tough nut to break. So if anybody's out there with a couple of $1 million and wants to come up with the next Friday the 13th, please give us a call. But and the other thing is, there is a terrific market on the internet of people making movies for very, very, very little money. I've got some friends down here named the Quiroz brothers who make a lot of direct-to-DVD horror films. Obviously, everybody wants to go beyond that. Everybody wants to make the next step. But it's also possible to learn all your craft by doing low-budget horror, and a lot of it is really excellent stuff. It suffers sometimes from the lighting is not as good because they can't afford all of the kinds of stuff that you really need to do a scene up well. But they're scary and they're fun, and you get a lot of experience. And the Quiroz brothers were great. They let me be. I played a bit part in their latest one, whose name escapes me, but I got to play the postman who comes up to this new homeowner and say, "You mean the realtor didn't tell you that this is a haunted house?"
So you're the harbinger,
Oh yeah,
the bearer of the bad news.
It's the Greek chorus, and I got to be the Greek chorus, and it's great fun. And there're just a lot of stuff, and you should go to as many horror film festivals and local film festivals and hang out at college campuses, because whether you're an actor or a writer or whatnot, you start hooking up with people. I mean, people who want to make movies. There are directors out there who want to shoot things, and if you've got a great idea, come up with that log line, whatever it is, and work on it with people. I mean, that's the way Sean and I started. He had done, in all respect, he had done with Wes Craven Last House on the Left before I ever met him. So he had the chops, but he'd used up all the money from that. And he and I were both on our uppers, as they say in Great Britain, meaning we had no money. And so we were just trying, and finally, he found this guy with some money who would do the two kids movies, and we did that. And then when he came up, it was much easier with the success of Halloween. It was much easier to come up, to say, hey, look, this is the coming thing, because Halloween had already proven that there was big bucks in horror. So he got the money for that. And the rest is cinematic history.
Well, now you do writing workshops. That's how we first met you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so you have a good understanding of the craft beyond just your own scripts. From looking at the current films out there, what's some common problems that you're seeing?
Common problems I'm seeing is people working too hard to tell the audience stuff. I mean, I keep seeing exposition showing up in people's screenplays where they feel they have to tell the audience who's married to whom and what and why and whatnot, and there are better ways to do that. That's why I really push that people should go to local universities and take whatever courses they can, because you cover all that kind of stuff about exposition and try how to build a scene, and also work with actors, because there's nothing that will teach you more than when you go in with a screenplay, as I have done, and have an actor say, I did an off-Broadway play years ago, and the actor said, I can't play this scene. I don't know how to play it. And I would explain in words, and he'd say, well, that's fine. Those are nice words, but I don't know what this character is really up to. So that's another thing. But for the most part, it's people not using their ears well enough. You really got to listen to how real people talk, and not get carried away. Writers love to think that I don't know. You go through a screenplay, and if you start to see 4 pages where everybody's got 9 lines of dialogue each time they talk, something is really wrong. Because it's just they're going on and on and on and on and on, and if Marx and Julie are having a fight, I don't think either one lets the other one go on for 9 lines of dialogue.
Maybe 9 words.
9 words on a good evening. Yeah, after you've watched Dr. Phil. But from there, it just descends into hell, which is what real people do, and that's much better But we love to, write the Gettysburg Address in the middle of somebody's thing, But
now, do you think some of that might be? This is kind of something I had said to a writer, and about a script, because I do some acting, and I said they don't trust. They want everyone to just say with words everything, because they don't trust the actor enough to be able to bring some depth and some character to the character?
Well, because they don't understand acting. I mean, it's really weird that here we are engaged in this thing where we're bringing the words to the actor, and not understanding what the craft of acting is, and that's why I keep saying in my workshops that acting happens between the lines. Just watch Glenn Close. Somebody says, "Screw you, Glenn," and just watch her face. She doesn't have to say any words at all. I don't have. If I were lucky enough to ever write for somebody like her, you say, "Screw you, Glenn," and just say, "Glenn reacts."
Yeah.
She's not going to have to say anything. I mean, I know we all have met people where if you get that face, you do not want to live any longer. Like I told a friend of ours, Barbara, that she should quit smoking, and I got the face, and she never had to say another word to me again. I mean, so it is that thing that you have to work with actors and you have to put up with them, and because I remember a discussion I had with the late Walter McGinn, who was in my play off Broadway, and he was a brilliant actor, and he said, "Look, Victor, in this scene, do I want her to sleep with me or don't I?" And I said, "Well, you're ambivalent." And he said, "Fine, I can't play ambivalence on stage. You have to tell me, do I want to sleep with her or not?" And I said, "Okay, you do."
He's a guy, yeah.
But that was after 45 minutes of intelligent discussion that I had learned at Yale, which was useless. And so he played it, and what was wonderful was he played it, and the natural reticence in the human being was there, so it still looked ambivalent. Because I don't, it's very hard to play a pure objective anyway. So you just have to go. You have to have your head thoroughly beaten upon by an actor who explains what he or she does for a living.
Well, you have a background in acting as well as writing. Do you think that that's something that most writers would benefit from, just taking some courses or just learning as much as they can about acting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I think, I got a master's in theater at Tulane, and I took a directing course, which made me, and that was actually more helpful than an acting course, because I knew I was a terrible actor. I mean, I'd already proven that in college. But in graduate school, as a director, I got to talk to and work with some really good actors, one of whom I did a couple of scenes from of Mice and Men with Rick Hurst, who went on to be, I will grant you this may not be art either, he went on to be the dumb sheriff or the dumb deputy in Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh.
And his son is a really good actor. He's on Sons of Anarchy now. He's the tall one that wears the stocking cap. It's a real acting family, Rick Hurst. But at any rate, in working with the actors and just sitting one-on-one with them and saying, okay, how do we make these lines, these Steinbeck's lines come alive? So that does it. Also, my email address, free for the asking, is vicmill1, VICMILL number 1, at Comcast.net. And if you want, send me an email, tell me you've got a screenplay, and I will read it, and I'll give you notes, and it won't cost you a penny. It may cost you some humility, but...
and some dignity, but other than...
Oh, no, I don't. I try not to steal dignity, and
Oh, okay, yeah.
My thing is not to say this sucks, but to say, you might want to take another try at it, where looking at it from the perspective of the person who's actually getting killed might be a more interesting way to go at it. But I'll offer suggestions, but not say personally, between you and me, I don't ever want you to touch a word processor again. I won't do that to anybody, because otherwise I'll be in heaven or hell, wherever I get to go. And that person will go on television, and in every interview will say things like, well, the great Victor Miller told me I should never write again, and I've gotten 4 Oscars.
You're a wise man.
Well, I learned from having been burned.
When we were at the workshop, you said something about Cabin in the Woods. At the time, we hadn't seen it. We have now seen it. And and I'll just let you know, we did like it because we like Joss
I was
Whedon
going to
from there.
save that for.
I don't know. Maybe we didn't. I don't know.
I want an honest reaction. I don't know what he thinks about it.
Maybe we're split. Who knows? But what was your reaction to it?
My reaction to it was that it was a dishonest piece of superior, condescending crap.
No.
While at the same time with some very scary elements and some wonderful scenic stuff. However, as soon as you tell me that the horrors are being controlled by people in a control room, you've lost me.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
I think we'd been indoctrinated into the world of Joss Whedon many years before, so I think it's a different perspective.
Well, who am I to tell the person who's making all the money off Avengers that he can't do that? But I can just say that my personal take on the film is that they were doing a very cutesy, thinly disguised satire of. See, the guys in the control room are writers of horror films.
Mm-hmm.
That's who they are metaphorically. And then they're the actors who are the characters in the screenplay. And then we know, and so the whole premise of this thing is that we have to scare the audience every year. Otherwise, the real scary stuff will come up from below. Now, below means it all goes back to Bruno Bettelheim, the child psychiatrist, who said that we need Grimm's fairy tales in order to deal with the real terrors in our lives as infants. And so that's what this is all a sort of kind of a ha-ha, aren't we brilliant? To me, that's what it read like. Now, they may not have been at all.
Yeah, actually, I think that it might be a difference in this, and I keep telling people, I say, because I don't want to ruin it either, I don't want to spoil people, and I say, I really liked it, but I thought it was going to be a horror film, but it's not really, but I don't know how to explain it.
It's a comment on horror films using horror.
Yeah, and to me it was like, well, there's horror elements, but it's sort of a subplot.
Yeah.
But but there's something else bigger going on, and it's one of the I'm not always good at explaining these things.
Well, to give them credit and not think of them as totally without conscience, they could be thinking of this as a teachable moment, where we are using horror to teach you that, look, these horror movies are designed to keep the real terrors of your own personality at bay. You go to a horror movie, you get the shit scared out of you, and you won't have to deal with the fact that your mother and father were absolutely vile and your uncle, molested you. That's the theory of horror. Mm-hmm. But I don't like to see the theory of horror. I like to see horror.
Yeah, I find it a little disturbing that the character I identified with the most and pretty much was going, yeah, he's right on, was like the pothead through the whole thing. I love that guy. And then his rant about the world and we should just let it. And I'm like, he makes sense. I'm a little concerned about my own psyche at this point.
Yes, well, I don't think take nothing seriously is the answer to psychiatric problems. I will talk to you guys again. I am sure you are a delight. And let's do this again. And at the very least, come see me in Lexington if all is well in September.
Oh, that would be great.
I am allegedly invited. I plan on being there.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. We're so happy to have you on here and talk to you again.
Well, it was my fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talk to you again.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was a fun interview, and thanks to Victor for taking the time to chat with us. We love that guy. So also thank you to all of our listeners, and we're going to chat for just a few minutes before the show ends. So if you have anything that you would like to share or ask, please feel free to call in now. The number is area code 914-338-0314. And we don't have anyone in the queue at the moment. So I have more zombie talk. We wanted to get to the interview. There were also some more recent, not to glamorize, but just because it feels a little bit like, oh, holy hell, what's happening. There have been some other recent zombie-like attacks. There was in Missouri, a man killed and ate parts of his roommate. And over in Sweden, so the U.S., it is not all us. There was a man who cut off his wife's lips and ate them, apparently, I guess, in a jealous rage. That might be a first for a jealous rage. So, if we do want to go back in, and I'm feeling the need to look at the CDC's comments for suggestions for how to prepare for the zombie attack, I can tell you for sure that you do want to invest in a good machete. Don't think that you can buy a decent machete at a place you can also buy groceries for, say, $5, and that it's actually going to cut anything. Not that I'm speaking from experience, but I've heard.
Yeah. I'm a little worried now.
You have to sleep sometime, babe.
Uh-oh. Help me.
So whichever's more scary, marriage or zombies?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little crazy. Ethan, are you calling in? Is Ian? Yeah, I think Ian's calling
Someone's calling in. I bet it's Ian. You'll know from the accent.
Brains!
A couple of them have eaten some brains, haven't they? Some didn't get to the brains by the time they started getting to the flesh, but I think the guy in the Missouri actually started eating some brains.
You about the zombie hooker that cut off her John's cock so she could have a vibe?
I honestly didn't catch some of that, dude. I'm so sorry.
Is that English?
Sorry, Ian. What was the first part of that?
I was just sort of like thinking rather naughty, like usual. Did you ever hear the one about the zombie hooker that cut off her John's didgeridoo used as a dildo? Well, she didn't have to cut it off. She didn't have to cut it off because with him being sort of like living dead himself, it just dropped off.
Oh, well, yeah.
How embarrassing. I hate when that happens.
Well, they say it happens to every zombie at some point. It's nothing to be embarrassed about.
I think he was Russian, actually. He was called Andropov.
Oh, wow. I don't know how many zombie jokes are going to come out of this.
I don't know.
But it's a little creepy.
That wasn't really a zombie joke. That was just me admitting off the cuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, good show, guys. Really good show. Great opening interview. It makes me wonder how you're going to top that.
It's going to be tough.
We have ways.
We're going to do interviews by scening. It's going to be,
Nobody wants to hear that.
Are you going to do any interviews, sort of like using sign language? Can you imagine that?
That would be interesting.
Well, that would be a video one, and I haven't known sign language. I did know sign language as a child, but I've pretty much forgotten almost all of it. Pretty much all I know now to sign is, I'm sorry, I don't know sign language.
But, the only ones I know is off and the middle finger thing,
Well, that's mostly universal. In some places, it's the index finger, though, so you got to be careful.
And there's also that sit sign you can make with your hand when you're at rock concerts,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So pretty much all I remember how to sign a few things, and I'm sorry I don't know sign language. Just like, but the only thing I remember in Croatian is "Žao mi je, ne znam hrvatski," which is I'm sorry I don't know Croatian. I learned that it's very convenient to say that you don't know the language when you're going someplace. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, well, here in the UK, we kind of learned that years and years ago. Because basically, over the centuries, we've gone to these different countries, conquered these different people, and said, "Yo, you're going to speak English."
Yeah.
So we did all the hard work for you guys,
Yeah, it's okay. Well, I think actually the French still have us beat. Don't they speak French in more areas of the world than they do English?
Don't even mention the French.
we're such far distant neighbors. We really don't give a crap. But maybe you could be our European zombie correspondent. Keep us updated on
there you go.
on any zombie apocalypse events that are happening.
We had a huge zombie apocalypse this weekend. It was called the Royal Diamond Jubilee, where over 1 million zombies turned up to admire and fawn all over the Queen. Have you ever noticed how the Queen, she's looking more and more like Yoda in drag every day? It's unbelievable.
Oh, God, love her. Well, she's not as young as she used to be, so, you got to understand, we're Americans, so the whole monarchy thing is just sort of odd to us anyway. So, it's amusing. It's kind of entertaining from time to time. We don't really get it. But
I don't get it either. I just saw I avoid, the only thing I watched to do with the Jubilee yesterday was sort of like the big rock concert they had on BBC One. And Cheryl Cole turned up. You don't think you've heard of her. She's sort of like some wannabe pop star here in the UK that did about one episode of X Factor in the States and got flown back.
Okay, now, I was going to say, the impression we're getting on our side of the pond with news is that pretty much everything's over there is stopped for this. Is that, is pretty much this all-consuming at the moment? I mean, is life going on as normal and y'all are just catching up with it in the evenings, or is this truly just pretty much all-consuming at the moment?
It's been pretty much all-consuming on all the 5 major channels. I've been I've had a great time going through my my DVD collection. I've called it movie weekend. Trying to be clever, rhyming
now,
with
are kids missing school, and people able to take off work to go do these things, or is it just relegated to the media?
It's been like one big weekend bank holiday for most people. Except people that work at some of the supermarket stores and 24-hour garages and stuff like that. The chemist hasn't been open. Doctor surgeries have been shut down for it. Other than
please tell me the pubs are open, because that's civilization.
The pubs have to be open really because and the pubs are actually have actually kind of bought into it. But what's kind of really funny is where I live. I'm in the northwest of England. I'm in a very strong working class area, and I've only really seen maybe 2-3 houses with bunting up and Union flags up. I don't call it the Union Jack. Yeah, it's only the Union Jack when it's at sea. Yeah, only uneducated, ignorant bastards calling it the Union Jack when it's on land. It's the Union flag on land, the Union Jack at sea. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's actually true. You can look that up, and
Now wait a minute. That means in the episode where Captain Jack first appeared and Rose was wearing her Union Jack shirt that they were talking about, he referred to it as something about saw a blonde hanging from wearing a Union Jack. So Captain Jack got that wrong on Doctor Who.
Uh-oh.
Well, most people in the UK just call, because they're lazy and they're uneducated, unlike me, they call it the Union Jack.
Yeah, we call it the Union Jack, but we don't really care so much.
Even right, but it's actually the Union flag when it's on land, and it's Union Jack when it's at sea. That's sort of like the correct way it is. But our true flag here in England is actually the George Cross.
Huh.
That's the flag I'd have outside my house.
Ours is easy. It's just always the stars and stripes, no matter what.
Yeah. I was tempted to get a George Cross and stick it outside my house as an act of rebellion this weekend.
Would you get egged? I mean, is that a phenomenon that occurs in England? Does your home get egged for things like that?
No.
No, you know. Okay, yeah. People at night can drive by and throw eggs at your house, which is fun to clean off of your door and your window the next day.
Well, we don't really get that around here. You have to do something pretty spiteful and pretty horrific in order to get egg. Like maybe crucify somebody's cat or something. No,
I think mostly ours are really bored, unsupervised teenagers.
Or zombies. Zombies with eggs.
Zombies with eggs. No.
I actually got egg once, and I didn't do nothing to provoke it. Basically, as in my late teens and early 20s, I was actually a runner. I did a lot of athletics and track and field, and my name was pretty much in the local paper every week, along with photographs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, you were asking for it.
I remember running home from the shop. I ran to and from the shop because it was mere minutes before it shut. They actually had closing hours back then. And it was like years and years ago, back in the day, huh? Joking.
All those young whippersnappers.
Those young whippersnappers, those young whippersnappers, buy it. Anyway, they mobbed some eggs at me, and I to this day I don't know why. I think it's probably they thought, oh well, we've seen this guy in the newspaper. Let's just see how fast he can run.
I think they just want to see if they can hit you.
They missed.
Oh, cool.
They missed, but only by a fraction. A little bit of egg actually ricocheted onto my pants, but it didn't actually hit me. It kind of hit the ground, and some of the egg white or yolk actually ricocheted. It wasn't a valid hit. I'll tell you. And you got Victor Miller in the chat room there. Hey Vic, how you doing?
Hi Vic.
Oh hey, Victor's in the chat room.
How you doing? Do we have him on the?
He's in the chat room there.
Oh, hi. Obviously Mark's is the techie because I'm like chat room. Oh, that means I get to talk to him. Oh no, that would be the typed word, the written word.
The written word.
I'm doing good to check emails, so.
Yeah, I just got a mail in my inbox from Raisa, and it's about something you guys were talking about earlier, the zombies versus gladiators thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm just wondering how could that possibly happen? I mean, surely a zombie, sort of like swinging an axe or a broadsword or something, his arm's going to drop off, right?
Well, it sort of depends on the zombies. I mean, in recent years, you've had more zombies that are truly not so much the undead, but people who have been afflicted with some sort of disease or some chemical, which they wouldn't already be in the immediate throes of rigor mortis and decomposition. So if you think about it, they wouldn't be slow, and parts of them would have to take some time to be falling off, because if they're really only under the influence of something, then they're not actually dead yet.
And there's fast zombies.
It's kind of like an old geezer taking Viagra and looking at the zombie, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's different kinds of zombies these days. So I don't know. You'd have to really decide which way they're going with the whole zombie thing. So I don't know. I find them all creepy. I have a hard time with zombies. I have only been able to watch Shaun of the Dead. I love Shaun of the Dead. I did look away a little bit. Really liked Zombieland as well. What else have I been able to tolerate?
Oh.
I think that's it. I'm a wuss. I'm an absolute weenie. Zombies scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, she won't watch Walking Dead.
No.
Don't
laugh at me.
Have you seen the finale of Game of Thrones, Ian?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good finale. I'm actually quite like Game of Thrones. I'm a big fan of Tyrion Lannister, because he's kind of like a creepy, sneaky, devious. He's just a devious little guy. I like that guy.
I think is that Victor calling in?
It could be. I can't remember what his number
is. Hold on just a second, Ian. We're going to see. We got someone calling in. I'm not sure who it is. It might be Victor. Hold on just a second.
All right. Hold on a second.
It is I.
It
Hello.
is you. How are you?
I am well. We are getting ready. We're getting ready to go to the Fox Theater tonight to see young Ian Miller play bass, opening for some act that I couldn't care less about.
But at least you have someone to root for at the beginning.
Absolutely.
That's great. Have fun.
Absolutely. I'm one of the people who's not saying, get those people off so we can get to the good part.
Yeah, you're liking the stuff at the beginning. So, so how did you feel about the show? I
am loving the show, but I was busy as I indicated in my other emails. And so I came in at the point where we were discussing flag courtesy and flag nomenclature for the British Isles.
Yes, we strive for education in this as well. And then they did start discussing Game of Thrones, which I never told you what my problem with it was, Victor, because I would normally, Mark's like, oh no.
We only have a few more minutes.
Ordinarily, this is the genre I would absolutely love, but I've not read the books. But at the very beginning, they have that Daenerys blonde chick, and she gets sold, basically, they say married, but it's basically sexual slavery. And her so-called husband repeatedly rapes, sexually tortures her, and then, according to the story, once she's convinced that she needs to just give into it and learn to enjoy being sexually tortured, then they fall in love, and theirs is supposed to be the absolute great love story in this whole thing. Personally,
and they even brought him back last Sunday.
Yeah,
they did.
And in my mind, I cannot possibly understand. So what you're saying is, if all rape victims would just learn to relax about it and enjoy it, they might love their rapist. And I find that. It's just so awful. I can't even imagine the rest of the show has anything worthwhile.
It worked for Luke and Laura in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And that was shameful.
It was, but you know what's so funny was I was not at the age where I knew that's what had happened until many, 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 many years later after they had been gone from the show and came back.
Right.
Yeah, and then my mom told me that, and I was like, "Oh, you're kidding!"
And I haven't read Game of Thrones, and I don't want to right now because I don't want to ruin myself for the show. But from what I've heard, is that in the books, before they had sex, she actually asked for her permission, and then for some reason on the TV show they decided, I guess they wanted
him as an evil rapist.
Yeah, they wanted to ratchet up, I guess, to make the arc a greater turn, and they decided to do that twist, which I think was a mistake.
Yeah, because the problem is a rapist is incapable of love. They're evil. So, I mean, that just ruins the whole premise. So you have an entire storyline that was ruined in the first episode. So they just ruined the whole show.
You're sounding like you live inside my brain, because there was a wonderful review of Game of Thrones in the New Yorker a couple of weeks ago where this exact point was brought up.
Oh, I'm so glad. I thought I was the only one.
I think it was either the New Yorker or New York Magazine. That pile gets sort of indistinct after a while. But it was a woman who, I think the writer was a woman, and she was talking about there was at least one actress who walked off the set saying, I'm not going to be treated that way on camera, and because they just keep trying to undress. They undress women and slap them around and call it television.
And my problem, and people, I've gotten this, but you watch Spartacus. I'm like, but on Spartacus, it's treated as a horrible thing. There's slaves.
That's my other. Spartacus is my other guilty pleasure.
That's why I love it. But in Spartacus, when they're raped, it's considered a horrible thing, and then you get to watch them suffer and pay for it later. It's the idea that rape's okay. If you just put cool music and nice clothes to it.
Cynthia Dye Robinson in the last series, she took over as Nadia, and boy, didn't she get some revenge at the end.
I love whenever she's like, you're right, it's not an easy task to take off a man's head with one stroke. And he's like, that's okay, I'll teach you. I'm like, that's a love story. I love that. So,
I'm just glad the dragons came back.
You know, honestly, I think the dragons sound like the dragons, and then Peter Dinklage's character and the little girl might be the only worthwhile things in the whole thing, but I just can't bring myself to even want to watch it after that. So
those are the only things that are keeping me engaged in it. It's Peter Dinklage's character, and also the young girl. She's got a great character. The rest of it is kind of sick and twisted.
In one of the reviews, they interviewed Joffrey, or they interviewed that young girl who plays opposite Joffrey, and she said that she fears for him on the bus if he has to travel in public because everybody hates him.
Yeah, and I've heard he's a sweet kid, and I think I read that he was excited. Everyone's congratulating him. He got accepted to university, and he's probably just as sweet as can be, and he's probably getting such evil glares.
I doubt he's sweet. Anyone who can make faces like that and talk that way can't be nice.
Maybe it's just deep down.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was my problem. Is if you're gonna have that kind of thing in there, it would be the same as if you had, a man who horribly physically abuses children, but once the child learns to be okay with it, then they can have a happy relationship. That would also be sick and twisted and keep me from watching the show.
It's I just, as I said, I watch for the battle scenes, which they're going cheap on, and the costumes.
Oh my God.
And the eunuch. I like the eunuch.
Yeah.
Good character.
To be honest, I mean, their acting and their acting talent is absolutely stellar, and the art direction and production value is fantastic. And if they hadn't done that, I would probably be a huge fan of the show, but I can't watch it after that. So, I would probably be the biggest fan if they hadn't had one of the heroes be a rapist.
They need to retcon it. The spirit made them think that's what happened.
Yeah, they should retcon it in the next season. Maybe then I'll go back and watch it.
They did kill Drogo at the end of the series, so
but they still
at the end of the series.
in love. And at best, she had Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it does weaken her character a bit.
Yeah, and I don't care about her. I think she's a pathetic character.
Yeah. Well, we only have a few more minutes, so Ian, do you have a question for Victor?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but it's been nice getting a chance to speak to you, and you gave a great interview there, so I really enjoyed listening to it. So.
Well, thank you very much. So these guys are really fun interviewers. I came off the phone call with them and went downstairs, and my wife said, "Why are you smiling?" And I said, "Because I enjoyed an interview."
Well, we're glad.
Thank you.
And we really did enjoy. Victor was great to come to a film festival here, the May Day Film Festival in Evansville, Indiana. Who'd have thought? And gave a couple of workshops on writing, and it was a great deal of fun. So.
Yeah.
And I just screened this afternoon. I screened the Linville Incident.
Oh yeah. I was in that.
Actually in that, yeah.
Well, see, it was fun. And who were you? I forget.
I was the woman who was gardening, which oddly enough, and I turn into an alien. What's really sad?
Giving away the story.
Oh yeah, what's really sad is I've been an alien, a psychic gypsy fortune teller, and some other stuff. The hardest thing I ever had to do is pretend to know how to garden.
Well, I'm going to sound like a horrible brown noser, but I enjoyed your performance best.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was freezing.
I loved you down. I loved you in the ground trying to defend an idiot.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
but my wife and I enjoyed the film.
Thank you. Yeah, they did a really good job.
Her Royal Highness Yoda in drag is on the television again.
I'm sorry?
What?
Her Royal Highness Yoda in drag is on the television again.
It took me a second to catch your lingo there. I was like, Yoda, what? Sorry, my brain moved on.
Well, that's my name. That's my new name for the Queen.
See, we can't say those things, Ian, because we're not English. So if we ever visit and people know, they might send their scariest rugby team after us.
Well, I'm surprised I've not got police knocking on my door trying to condemn me for treason.
Well, we'll stick up for you best we can. Well, thank you, Victor, so much for calling in too. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you, guys. And I will hang up, and everyone who's got nothing better to do, go to KowloonWallCity.com or whatever it is to hear my son play, but not live tonight. At any rate, thank you. KowLoon, and then Walls, WALLED, City. It's the name of the group. Why, I don't know. But there it is. Good night, kids.
Proud Papa.
Good night.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
You know, my nephew, he had a band called Bollocks of the Beast.
You know, there's no shortage of names that you never really know the story behind. But thanks for calling in, Ian.
Well, thanks for calling in, Ian.
No problem.
We got the countdown here. We are T-minus almost done. So
Just about. Yeah, we have to wrap it up real quick here.
yes.
But
So thank you.
thank you. Talk to you
bye.
later. Bye.
Bye, Ian.
All right. So that's it for our first episode of GenreTainment.
And we do want to get this in. Before we go, we just want to let you know about our web series called Reality on Demand. You can find it at realityondemandseries.com.
And if you want to keep up with web series and other internet news, you can also check out my column, IndieNet and Beyond, which Julie kindly edits because I kind of suck at grammar. You didn't hear that from me, though.
Well, yeah.
And you can find it at scifipulse.net. scifipulse.net. I also co-host another Blog Talk Radio show with my friend Ian.
She was just here.
On Mondays called The Big E. And so next week we chat with Ben Bays, executive producer of the popular sci-fi noir web series Aiden 5. He's won quite a few awards and been nominated for a whole lot of awards.
Yeah, so please join us next week.
And we'll be back here at the same time. You have a great day, and thank you for listening to GenreTainment.
Adios.